Very well. It's already 10 now. I think we can start.
Right?
It's already 10 a.m. We can start the session.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So, good morning to all of you, and I hope everyone is doing well. So this is the 10th talk out of 12 talks on the topic of mind training, looking at the book, the text, the 7-point mind training by Geshe Chekawa, using the commentary called Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun. The author of that is Nam-kha Pel. So I thought that tonight we could, I'm sorry, it's night where I am. This time, today, this session, to start with a meditation on something that we looked at last time, our last session. So we were going through some lines of the text under the heading, the measure of having trained the mind. So this is like the criteria to determine how well one has practiced these teachings, mind training teachings, and actually, accomplished this practice of mind training. So one of the lines related to this was talked about constantly having a joyful mind. So somebody who is very knowledgeable of and practiced in mind training knows how to use all circumstances, all situations, even difficult ones, even problems, even sickness, pain, external problems, troubles in society, war, people mistreating you, and so on. So no matter what happens, however bad it may be, a practitioner of mind training knows how to utilize these situations and not get down, not get upset, not get angry or depressed, but even be able to keep their mind happy, positive, joyful by using the mind training techniques. So, that's not something we can do right from the beginning, of course. In the beginning, we're just learning how to do these practices, and we keep doing them again and again and again, and eventually we can get to that point. So it's a bit like learning how to play a musical instrument, like the piano. So in the beginning, you can't immediately sit down and start making beautiful music. You have to learn the scales, and you have to practice the scales, and then you start learning really simple little tunes. So if you keep learning and practicing, training over and over and over and over again, eventually you can get to the point where you can make beautiful music, even without having to look at the book. But just from memory, you can sit down and play these beautiful songs, beautiful melodies. So practice is very important. So it's the same with mind training or any kind of activity or practice that relates to our mind. It takes time. In the beginning, we learn and we practice, and we probably make a lot of mistakes along the way, but we learn from our mistakes, and we can gradually, get better and better. So anyway, I thought we'd do a meditation on this idea of constantly having a joyful mind, and just looking at our own experience, like what we do, how we respond when problems happen, difficult situations happen. Are we able to remember the thought training teachings, the mind training teachings, or do we first get upset and worried and anxious and so on, and then maybe later, after some time, we remember these teachings? So just to look at our own ability to do this kind of practice, and then try to recognize how, if we can use the thought training teachings and methods, then it will be so much more satisfying, so much more positive, that whole experience, rather than negative. Okay, so let's start with a few minutes to settle down. So try to sit in a comfortable position. It's good if you can keep your back straight. But at the same time, let your shoulders relax. Let your whole body relax as much as possible. Let go of any tension, tightness, stress in your body. Also, relax your mind. That means let go of any thoughts there might be in your mind, thoughts about things that you did earlier today or any time in the past, as well as thoughts about what you're going to do later today or any time in the future. And when we meditate, ideally we let go of thoughts of the past and the future and just let our mind, our attention be in the present, right here, right now. So being aware of the breathing, paying attention to each breath, each inhalation and exhalation of the breath, one after the other, is a helpful way of settling our mind down in the present, in the here and now. So do that for a few minutes. And don't worry if thoughts do come up in your mind. That's normal, but you do have a choice. You don't have to get caught up in the thought, follow the thought. You can just notice the thought and put it aside. Kind of say to the thought, not now, I'm busy, come back later. And so really try to keep your mind focused on the here and now, on the breath coming in and going out, and put aside all other thoughts. Okay, so now let's take a few more minutes to generate a positive intention, a positive motivation as our reason for being here. I'm sure all of us do want to do what is right, what is beneficial, what is true, and avoid doing things that are harmful to others, harmful to ourselves, that are erroneous or false. So get in touch with that feeling, that wish to do good, do what is right. And then see if you can expand that wish to include all beings without exception, not leaving anyone out. So it's helpful to understand that all beings are united in our wish to have positive experiences, happiness, peace, safety, have all our needs and wishes fulfilled. So this is something we all have in common, all living beings. And conversely, we have the wish to not experience any pain, physical or mental, or any kind of problem or difficulty, danger, anything harmful to ourselves, to our loved ones. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone, all living beings, could be free of all problems, all pain, all difficulties, and could have every happiness, every good experience, all their needs fulfilled, all their wishes fulfilled. Their minds are really peaceful and happy and content. Wouldn't that be wonderful if that could happen? So we can make a contribution to that by living our lives in a way that we do only things that are helpful and meaningful, helpful to others, helping them have happiness and be free of suffering. And if we can avoid doing anything that causes harm or suffering to others. So if you can see if that resonates with you. You feel, yes, that sounds right. That's how I want to be, how I want to live my life. And on top of that, you may feel comfortable with the idea of working for enlightenment, striving to reach the state that the Buddha attained. Because by reaching that state, we will be able to help others in the best possible way. The Buddha has many qualities and abilities with which to help everyone, all living beings, without exception. So you might feel comfortable with adding that to your aspiration, to your motivation. And then I think that our session here tonight, may it help us learn ways in which we can be more helpful to others, and ways in which we can bring ourselves closer to the state of enlightenment, the state of Buddhahood. so we can help others in a very expansive way, very extensive way. So feel that wish or that aspiration to learn things here in this session that will enable us to fulfill those wishes, those aspirations. Okay, so then for the meditation, over the last few weeks, we've looked at how there are methods or tools we can use when we face problems or difficulties, unexpected, unwanted things happening in our life, which we might normally get upset about and respond in ways that aren't very helpful, getting angry, blaming others, or feeling sorry for ourselves, complaining, trying to get attention from others, or maybe just sinking into depression or despair, thinking that problems will never end, they'll go on forever. So these are some of the ways we sometimes respond to problems, but the thought training teachings tell us those ways of responding are not helpful, and they just make things worse. And there are other things we can do when we face problems that are helpful, don't make things worse, and that actually make the problem, the situation, part of our practice, part of our path, developing ourselves to higher states of mind, especially enlightenment, helping us learn more compassion, more love, more wisdom, and so on. So probably many of you are familiar with these methods, these tools. Then the question is, how well are we able to use these tools when we do face problems in our life? So bring to mind some problem that happened to you recently, some unwanted, unexpected situation, things happening you didn't want to happen. And just look at how your mind responded, whether or not you were able to use this situation in the path, transforming it into the path by using thought training teachings, or did you respond in some unhelpful way, just getting caught up in unhelpful, negative emotions? And then if you did forget to use any thought training methods and instead your mind got caught up in unhelpful emotions, what was that like? how did that affect your mind, your feelings, your experiences? Were those emotions helpful or harmful, just making things worse? So now let's imagine that you have a chance to go through that experience again. And this time, you remember one or more of the mind training techniques, the methods for transforming problems into the path. So imagine going through that experience again, but this time using a thought training or several thought training methods. And then just check how that is. What's the result of that? What's the outcome of using a thought training method in dealing with this problem? So if you're able to recognize that facing problems and difficulties with the thought training methods, the tools for transforming difficulties into the path, is a much more satisfying and meaningful way of handling the difficulties we face in life. So if you're able to recognize that, then see if you can conclude the meditation with a resolution, a determination to really try your best to remember to use these tools the next time a problem lands in your life, lands in your lap. And we have a strong determination to not just fall back on the old, unhelpful ways of responding, getting all caught up in disturbing emotions. Instead, have courage, have determination to make this situation's difficulty part of your path, part of your practice, helping you get closer to enlightenment, helping you to develop more positive qualities. Okay, so now you can come out of the meditation, open your eyes. So if you do find that you forget to use the thought training methods and get caught up in unhelpful emotions, it's not helpful to beat yourself up about that, to feel guilty, to feel bad. That's not helpful. So instead, just be kind to yourself, be compassionate with yourself, and remember that it does take time to develop this kind of practice. And, you know, we just keep trying. And if we do make a mistake or we forget to use mind training methods when facing a problem, we just remind ourselves, okay, next time a problem comes along, I really want to make sure I, you know, transform it into the path, make it part of the path by using the mind training techniques. So just generate that strong determination to do that. Okay, so there were a couple of questions that came up at the end of last week's class, and I was in a bit of a hurry to finish because the Dalai Lama was about to start teachings. So I had a few thoughts that I'd like to add on to what I said last time. So Faye asked a question about when you're meditating on equanimity, doing the equanimity meditation, and you think about how, you know, people have been kind to us in past lives, but on the other hand, they've also been harmful to us. And this is definitely true. And I said that, yeah, but there's not much point, not much benefit in thinking in that way. It's just going to increase our anger. And what we're trying to do is to increase positive feelings like love and compassion. And so afterwards, I remembered something that they say in the teachings, in the Tibetan teachings, that I find helpful. They say, imagine someone like your mother or someone who's just been really, really kind to you. It's given you a lot of love and kindness and help in your life. And you really feel that in your heart. You really care about this person and you really want to help them whenever they need help. So let's say this person goes through some kind of mental illness. They suddenly, you know, their mind becomes imbalanced and they start behaving in a kind of crazy way, irrational, and maybe even, you know, getting angry at you, yelling at you, maybe trying to harm you in some way. And not, you know, they're behaving in a way very different than they usually do. Like normally they're very kind and very caring and very helpful. But then because of this mental illness, they're behaving in just the opposite way. So because you really feel in your heart that this person is very important, very precious, they've been so kind to you. So if this were to happen to them, if they become kind of crazy, most probably you wouldn't get angry at them. You know, you wouldn't respond with anger and think, oh, this person is so terrible. I'm going to call the police. I want this person to be, you know, taken off to jail and locked up and, you know, probably not. You wouldn't respond that way. Instead, you would recognize that their behavior is because of their mental illness. They're not in the right state of mind. And so they need help. They don't need to be locked up by the police. They need help. So you would try to find help for this person from doctors, from psychologists, psychiatrists, and so on. And so your feeling would be the desire to help rather than the desire to harm. Yeah. So if you think about that, try to imagine that scenario and how you would feel that way towards this person. So they say that is an analogy for how we can think about sentient beings. Because, of course, we can't remember our past lives and how others have been our mother and our father and done all these things to help us and so on. the Buddha is able to see that, and the Buddha tells us that that is true. But for us, we can't remember that, so we don't have our own first-hand experience of it. But if we can take the Buddha's word, and feel that he knows what he's talking about, therefore it must be true. And therefore, yeah, everybody has been my mother and kind to me in all my lifetimes before this one. And so if you get a strong feeling for that, then you think about times when those people, those same beings have been harmful to you. You wouldn't feel so angry. You wouldn't feel so wanting to retaliate, wanting to harm them in return. Because you're so aware of the kindness they have shown you, just like the kindness of our mother in this lifetime. And you would want to help them instead of harming them. You just want to help them get out of this mental illness. Because when anybody does harmful things, it is a bit like being mentally ill. The delusions, the afflictive emotions like greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, jealousy, selfishness, we don't have any control over these. They just come up in our mind, take over our mind, and it's almost like we become their slaves, or we become possessed by them, like people get possessed by spirits and they act in really crazy ways. So, we all have times when we get possessed by our afflictive emotions, and then it's like we're crazy. We don't really have control over what we're doing, and we do harmful things. But it's really because our mind is in this state of confusion. So it takes a while to think about this and get to, the point where you understand it. But without understanding, then when someone does behave harmfully, whether it's to yourself or to others, you can look at that person and think, they're not in their right state of mind. Their mind is confused, is, overwhelmed by negative emotions. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really have control over what they're doing. They're creating problems for other people, also for themselves, because they're probably creating negative karma. And they're going to suffer in the future as a result of that. So this is a way of thinking to help us not get angry and have, anger and hatred and want to harm that person in return. So we think they have been kind to me before, and now, they're just temporarily insane and just creating problems for themselves and others. So it takes a while to get this, to really, make this part of your way of thinking. But if you can, then, it helps us to have compassion and the wish to help people, even those doing really harmful things, rather than angry at them and wanting them to suffer. So that was additional answer to Faye's question. And Sarah asked a question about, because I had said, we need to be genuine, and we sometimes might be very friendly to someone, but in our heart, we have negative feelings towards them. So, I just want to repeat and clarify that definitely we should always try to act with kindness and friendliness, respect towards other people, towards everyone, even people doing harmful things, even people we dislike. Because otherwise, if we act out our real feelings, our aversion, our dislike, our negative feelings towards others, if we act on the basis of those, then what kind of consequences will come? So in terms of karma, we create negative karma because we're acting in a negative way. We create negative karma. That means we're going to suffer in the future. We'll probably upset the other person and their friends and everybody else around us. It's very upsetting to see somebody acting in a negative way, speaking negatively, acting negatively. People get upset. We might lose friends. We might lose respect from others. People will be negative towards us. So it just has unfortunate consequences if we act out of aversion. So without awareness, then we should try to act in a positive way, in a kind way towards others. But at the same time, it is important to be honest with ourselves, to be aware. You know, if we really do have negative feelings towards that person, don't hide that, don't suppress that, don't pretend it's not there. Be aware of it, be mindful of it, and have the determination that this is something to work on. I can see that, yeah, I have these bad feelings in my mind and they're not good, and I am going to work on them. It does take time to work on those feelings, but I am going to do that work. So that's how we can be kind of honest and genuine with ourselves, but outwardly maintain friendliness and respect towards others. And we also need to be careful if people compliment us, you know, if they say things like, oh, you're such a kind person. That person was horrible to you, and you were so kind to them. That's amazing. You must be a bodhisattva. Something like that. I mean, that may be exaggeration, but, you know, we might get that kind of feedback from people. So we need to be careful and not believe it if it's not true. Yeah, if we know, like, oh, yeah, I was friendly to that person, but I do still feel, you know, hurt and negative inside. Okay, so don't let ourselves be blinded by other people's compliments and praise. Get puffed up with pride and think that it's true. I heard in the teachings, the Tibetan teachings, they tell the story of one man in Tibet who was very much liked by people, praised by people. So he was always getting people making compliments to him and saying how good he was, and he was this and he was that. So he was constantly getting praise from people. And then when he got to the end of his life, he realized that he paid too much attention to this praise that people gave to him, and it kind of blinded him to looking at his faults and realizing the things that he needed to work on. So he felt some regret that he received so much praise and didn't, you know, recognize his mistakes and faults and things that he needed to work on. So that's the danger of getting praise from people if we believe it and we don't look at ourselves and say, is it really true? Well, not really, no. I have to work on this, I have to work on that, and so on. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, so where we left off, we were on point number 6 out of the 7 points. And point number 6 is called the commitments or pledges of mind training. And in a book by Alan Wallace, there's a book by him on the 7-point mind training. He says that we can think of these commitments or pledges as like advice we might be given by our doctor. So if we're ill, or maybe we have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, or we're overweight or something, and our doctor gives us advice to have, you know, get more exercise and change our diet and so on and so forth. So if we follow the advice, then it will probably be quite wise and it will benefit our health and perhaps our long life as well. So the doctor giving us that advice isn't like, you must do this, and if we don't do it, we're really bad and guilty and so on, but rather it's something good for us. So I thought that's a nice way of thinking about these points of what are called commitments or pledges. If we take them to heart and practice them, or at least try to practice them, then they will help us in our practice of mind training, help us to have more compassion, more love, more bodhicitta, more wisdom, help us progress along the path. So they're good for us, good for our spiritual health. So I thought that's a nice way of thinking of these. Okay, so we are now up to, lost track of the numbers here. I was counting them before, but now I've lost the numbers. Anyway, the next line says, train consistently to deal with difficult situations. Train consistently to deal with difficult situations. The commentary, Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, mentions 5 kinds of difficult situations, although I would call them tricky situations that we have to be careful of. The first one is relationships with like the objects of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, spiritual teachers, and also parents, people who are important to us, people who've shown us a lot of help and kindness and care and so on. So it said in the teachings on karma that if we do anything negative, non-virtuous in relation to any of those beings, it's particularly negative. It's heavier negative karma in relation to spiritual teachers, parents, the 3 jewels, and so on. So with regard to them, we need to be very, very careful and look out for negative emotions arising, negative thoughts arising, the impulse to do something non-virtuous in relation to them. So just be very, very careful about that. The second is our family. So other than our parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, children, if you're a parent. So these are also very important people, important relationships. So we should be very careful and try to look out for disturbing emotions coming up. Some people tell me that they find themselves, people who are parents who have children, they find it so easy to get angry at their children. They can get more angry at their children than they can at other people. I don't know why, but anyway, for whatever reason. So, I mean, I think none of us really want to get angry at anybody, especially children, especially parents, but it can happen, maybe because of the closeness of the relationship and the amount of time you spend together. That kind of makes fertile ground for anger or other disturbing emotions. Of course, attachment is a big one. But just look out for these disturbing emotions and really try not to let yourself follow them, get carried away by them, and act them out, doing non-virtuous things. And the third tricky situation is with respect to anybody who you see as a rival, someone you are competing with. So this could be in business, it could be in the Dharma as well. If we're part of a Dharma center or temple, and there's other people around that we study with or we practice with, or in helping the center, you have organizing committee and so on. So with regard to those people, it's possible that we may get into a sense of competitiveness, wanting to do better, wanting to be better, wanting to show that we know more, that we're a better meditator, and so on. So if there's anyone towards whom we have that kind of feeling, we have to be very careful. With pride, for example, with arrogance. And also another thing that can happen is if something unfortunate happens to that person, our rival, we may feel secretly happy. We may feel ha ha ha. That's pretty nasty, isn't it? It does happen. So we need to look out for that and, really try not to let that happen. And if we do, and if it does happen, then we can purify. We can do purification and then just really try to work on our minds so that that doesn't happen again. And the fourth one is those who falsely accuse us. Okay, so, if we are blamed for something that we are not responsible for, or accused of doing something we didn't do. So then, that's usually really pushes our buttons, pushes our ego. We get quite upset about that. So anyone who treats us that way, can easily get very angry at them and want to retaliate, want to do something harmful to them in return. So be very careful about that. And then the fifth one is people that we dislike and get upset just when we see them or we hear their name, right? So people we really can't stand. Really, I have people like that. I mean, not necessarily people I know, but politicians, certain politicians, or just people in the world, terrorist leaders, and people who do really awful things, create so much harm, so much suffering for others. So sometimes I can get really upset with them, and I don't even want to look at their photos or hear their names. So that's something to be careful about, because that feeling is anger, is aversion. And if we're not careful, then that feeling can grow more and more, and mind can get very, very negative, and we might even act it out somehow. So, as we know in the teachings on the path, especially the Mahayana path, we need to cultivate love and compassion and the wish to help towards every living being, even those who do really harmful things to others. So we could really focus on that person and work on our anger, work on our feelings. There's lots of methods for doing that. And when we do our practices, we're often advised to visualize all sentient beings surrounding us, doing the practice along with us. And they say it's good to put your enemies right in front of you. So kind of make ourselves look at them and realize, oh, they want to be happy and don't want to suffer just like me. And they do suffer, they are suffering. And I really want to help them. If I can get them to do this practice together with me, then that will be beneficial for them. That will help to transform their minds. So there's lots of ways, lots of methods we can use to change our thoughts and our feelings towards such people. I usually recommend, though, when working on transforming your feelings towards difficult people, it's better to start with the less difficult ones, and then gradually you can work on the more difficult ones. Don't start with the worst one right from the beginning, but start with someone towards whom you just have a mild level of dislike or irritation. And if you're successful in transforming those feelings towards that person, then you can work on more difficult ones, and eventually you can get to the really difficult ones, the ones that really cause you to feel angry. Okay, so the next of these commitments or pledges says, don't rely on other conditions. So what this means is that in general, if we have favorable conditions, for example, we have a comfortable life, a place to live, enough food, quiet, peaceful people around us, good friends, spiritual friends, and so on. So these are good conditions that enable us to be able to listen to teachings, study teachings, meditate on them, practice them, and so on. But if we don't have such conditions, and if we have the opposite kind of conditions, then that makes it very difficult for us to study and practice. So just for example, if you're trying to listen to teachings or you're trying to meditate and there's a lot of noise, maybe your neighbors are doing renovation work. So there's all these, like jackhammers and that kind of noise. Or maybe they're having a party and they're playing really loud music. So then it makes it difficult. We feel distracted. We may also feel angry at them. So we can't always have control over our situation, over our environment. We can't always have the ideal conditions that we would like to have for our Dharma practice. But for someone who's practicing mind training, any kind of conditions, even unfavorable ones, even difficult ones, are not a hindrance or not an obstacle to their study, their practice, their meditation, because they know how to transform difficulties, difficult situations. So that's the meaning here. The point is, don't let yourself be completely dependent on the external conditions being perfect, being ideal for your practice of Dharma. Of course, you know, if we can have good conditions, then that's great. But like I say, we don't always have control over that. And so even when you don't have the ideal conditions, even when you have difficult conditions, you know, don't let that be a hindrance to your practice of Dharma. Continue to practice. And yeah, we can use all these situations to increase our compassion, wisdom, bodhicitta, and so on. The next line says, transform your attitude, but maintain your natural behavior. So what this means is that the practice of mind training, and in general, all Dharma practices, have to do with our mind, have to do with inner work, inner transformation. Okay, we're working on changing our thoughts, changing our feelings, changing our experiences, making them less deluded, less negative, less self-centered, and more positive, more altruistic, more pure. So that's the main practice, is transforming our own mind. And so when it comes to our outward behavior, our way of behaving, you know, with other people and so on, that should be natural. We shouldn't put on airs. We shouldn't be pretentious. We shouldn't, you know, behave in some different way, some special way that may make people feel uncomfortable with us. We should just be very natural and friendly, and, you know, talk with people in a friendly way, in a caring way. Be on the lookout for ways that we could help them, benefit them, bring them greater happiness, and so on. But yeah, so it says what we're trying to transform is our mind, our attitude, and our behavior should remain just normal, natural. That way people will feel comfortable with us, and then we have a greater chance of having a positive effect, a positive influence on them. So I'll just read a line from the commentary, Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun. It says, the great Chekawa is the author of the 7-point mind training. He said that all our practices of mind training should be inconspicuous to the outside world, but in reality, there should be great improvement. Of course, this takes time. All these practices take time. You don't expect to do it perfectly from the beginning. The next one says, don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. So this means we should try to avoid pointing out faults, mistakes, shortcomings, deficiencies, and so on of other people. It says both human and animal. So I guess even with dogs and cats, we should not make nasty comments about them. Of course, sometimes it may be necessary to talk about somebody's mistake or harmful action. For example, if you're a teacher, if you're a school teacher, and one of the students misbehaves, and you need to talk about this to the student's parents. You may need to talk about it with the principal, the other teachers, and so on, in order to take the right you know, to help this child or to take, you know, disciplinary action. So that's different. Okay, so there, your motivation ideally should be the desire to help the child. You don't want the child to continue making that same mistake. You know, that way they develop very bad habits and they'll have problems later in life. So in order to help someone to correct their mistakes, you may need to discuss things that they have done. But the motivation there, again, ideally should be compassion, should be a benevolent motivation, wish to help that person. And we only talk about this mistake to the people concerned, and you know, in a skillful way, not in a negative way, just complaining and blaming and so on, and not gossiping, you know, going and telling everybody what that person has done. So as long as we do it in the right way with the right motivation and skillful means to help the person. Also, it's good to focus more on the behavior and not on the person. You know, instead of saying, oh, that child is so bad, is so naughty, is so horrible, to say, he or she did this, and that kind of behavior is just not right. It's just not acceptable. So focus more on the behavior and how that's the thing that needs to be changed, rather than judging the person, the child, or whoever it is. The next one says, don't concern yourself with others' business. So this is like the saying we have in English, mind your own business. And in one of the monastic rites, you know, monks and nuns, there's a verse that says, just as a bee feeding on flowers does not spoil their color or fragrance, but just extracts their flavor, so a bhikshu or bhikshuni, monk or nun, entering an inhabited place does not interfere with others' affairs or notice what they do or do not do, but is mindful only of her own behavior, whether correct or incorrect. So I think that advice can apply to lay people as well. Anyone wanting to follow the Buddhist path, our main job, our main concern should be ourself, our own behavior of body, of speech, of mind, our own thoughts, our own feelings. That's what we need to work on. That's what we need to change, not other people. Our job is not trying to fix other people, get other people to behave themselves and stop doing this and do that instead. That's not our business. Of course, there are exceptions to that. If you are a teacher, if you're a Dharma teacher, if you're a senior monastic, for example, and you have junior monastics that you're guiding and teaching, then in that case, it is your job to help them to improve themselves, to practice properly. Or if you're a parent, of course, your responsibility is teaching your children, guiding your children to try to get them to behave properly and have good attitudes and so on. So if it is your responsibility to, you know, play that kind of role in someone else's life, then of course you do need to do that. But I think this is just talking in general when we are in the company of other people and it's not our business, you know, what this person does or doesn't do, that is not our business, then we should just mind our own business. I mean, if they come to us and ask for help and ask for advice, if they say, I have a problem with anger, I'm really getting angry all the time, and I notice you're really patient and calm, could you help me with my anger? So if somebody asks you for help, then you can offer some advice, some help to them. But if they don't ask for help and you try to give help, try to give advice, it's probably just counterproductive. The person might just get defensive, negative, You might, and it might just completely close off to you. And also, I think in situations where somebody is being harmed, especially if it's a child or an animal, someone who's more kind of weak and vulnerable, if that person is being harmed by somebody else, it wouldn't be right for us to say, well, I'm just going to mind my own business and not get involved in that. If we have the ability, we should try to do whatever we can to stop this harm from continuing. So I think we have to use our common sense, and there are exceptions to this. Doing what we can to help, doing what we can to prevent harm. Also, in terms of society and the government, this is a controversial thing. Sometimes some people think, well, Buddhists shouldn't get involved in politics, shouldn't pay any attention to what is going on in society and politics and so on. And other people think, no, because if we don't try to bring about positive, constructive changes, then we may just be allowing harm and unwise policies and unwise practices to be continuing. So there's different points of view, and there's quite a few now, I think, Buddhist organizations that do try to bring about constructive changes in society and in the government and so on. But again, we have to be very careful about our mind, our attitude, and try to keep our mind, free of negative thoughts and feelings, and really make sure our motivation is positive, is beneficial. We want to bring about what will be of the greatest benefit to the greatest number of people and beings. Yeah. Okay, then next. Give up every hope of reward. So this means it's mainly referring to mundane things such as prosperity, receiving gifts, fame, reputation, praise. So like the 8 worldly dharmas. So when we engage in Dharma practice, mind training practice, trying to follow the path, we should be free of the wish to gain these worldly dharmas as a result of our practice. And also even things like good rebirths in the future, just for ourselves, just for our own benefit. Oh, I want to have a good rebirth and just enjoy myself, like going to a 5-star hotel and, spa and getting a massage and enjoying all the good food. So, the Deva realms, the God realms are somewhat like that. So if your aspiration is to have such a good rebirth just to enjoy yourself, that's not right. We do want to have good rebirths in our future life, but so that we have the conditions where we can again learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, continue to develop ourselves on the path so that we can help others. The same with attaining nirvana and attaining enlightenment. Okay? We're doing this just for our own benefit, not thinking about others, not wanting to help others. Then this is the kind of reward that's mentioned here. Self-centered, excuse me, worldly and self-centered benefit just for oneself. So our goal should be Buddhahood, enlightenment, for the benefit of others. So this takes time, again, takes time to transform our mind, but just to be aware of that and work on that slowly, slowly. Okay, next it's avoid poisonous food. So that's pretty obvious. Nobody wants to eat poisonous food. But here it doesn't literally mean, contaminated food. Rather, it means our practice, our Dharma practice, which is meant to be nourishing and spiritually nourishing our mind, nourishing our heart, nourishing our development of bodhicitta. That's what Dharma practice should do. But it can become poisoned, spoiled by our self-cherishing or self-centered attitude. Just for an example, this is just what I came up with. If we think, well, I've been practicing thought training for a while, and I've become such a kind person, such a compassionate person. I hope people notice that. And I hope they think good thoughts about me, and I hope that they say good things about me to others. So I think that would be an example of kind of poisonous food, when our Dharma practice gets contaminated with self-centeredness, self-grasping, ego. So just be aware of that if it arises, and understand that's not the right attitude. Our wish is not for self-gain, but keep going in the direction of enlightenment, become less and less self-centered, more and more altruistic, cherishing of others, have more and more pure motivation. And so try to clear away that kind of attitude from our mind. The next one is a little puzzling. It says, don't maintain inverted loyalty. I didn't completely understand the explanation in this book, but I found in Alan Wallace's book on the 7-point mind training explanation that made sense to me. He says, what this means is, don't be lenient on your delusions, your afflictive emotions. So we might, when it comes to other people who behave in ways we don't like, or treat us in ways we don't like, towards those people we may feel anger, resentment, negative thoughts, negative feelings. But when it comes to our afflictions, the negative thoughts and attitudes in our own mind, we might be very soft on them, very gentle with them. We might think, oh, it's okay to have a little bit of anger, have a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of attachment isn't so bad, that doesn't hurt. To be a little bit selfish, that's okay. So we're very kind of nice to our afflictive emotions, which are the real cause of suffering, the real cause of problems, the real, the thing we should be focusing on and overcoming. So to be soft on our emotions, our negative emotions, but when it comes to other people, to be hard and negative. That's I think the meaning of inverted loyalty, our kind of backwards, our attitudes. Okay, the next one is, don't make malicious banter. Banter is like chatting. So this just means avoid speaking abusively, critically about other people's faults or mistakes, even in a joking way, because people can be very hurt by that. So we should always try to speak in ways that are kind and respectful, non-harmful, not hurtful. Next, don't wait in ambush. Can I get this picture of somebody hiding behind a bush, waiting for somebody to come along so you can jump on them? And so the meaning here is we should avoid holding a grudge against someone and looking for a chance to get back at them. Okay, so if somebody hurts us or does something we don't like, something contrary to our wishes and our needs and so on, then we may feel angry at them and resentful towards them, and then we're holding on to that feeling. Instead of transforming it, instead of overcoming it, we're holding on to that feeling, and then we're kind of looking for an opportunity to, strike back at them, get back at them. So that's the meaning of this. So we should try to be aware if any such thoughts like that are present in our mind. And if we do notice them, then realize that is something harmful, something we should work on. There's plenty of opportunities, plenty of remedies. Tonglen, for example, is a very good remedy. So I'll just try to do a few more and then we can stop for questions. Next one is don't strike at the vital point. So this means we should not reveal others' mistakes or weaknesses out of spite. If somebody has some area in which they are vulnerable and out of spite, out of the wish to harm them, we reveal that. The next one says, don't place the load of a horse on a pony. So that kind of brings to mind a heavy load that a large animal like a horse could carry, and you put that load on a smaller animal, like a small pony or a donkey. So it's really burdening them, really hard on them. So what this means is, if we try to shift blame or responsibility onto others, so maybe we were responsible for some mistake or something that went wrong, and instead of accepting responsibility, we try to shift it to others. We try to, get others to be blamed for that. Or another way this could happen is if there's some task, some job that needs to be done, and we're supposed to do it, but we don't really want to do it. It's something we find unpleasant. So we try to get somebody else to do it instead. So those are examples of this one. So we should always try to be considerate of others. And I mean, of course, we are sometimes in a position where we may have a lot of responsibilities, and we do have people helping us. And so it's fine to, ask others to help us with different jobs and so on, but not burden them and be inconsiderate of them. Manipulative and so on. So again, our attitude ideally should always be compassion, kindness, benevolent intention, wanting to help others and not harm them. So this kind of thing is you can see, coming from self-centeredness, caring more about oneself than others. So the other one is a little similar. The next one, it says, don't sprint to win the race. So this means, let's say if we and a number of other people together have done something, have accomplished something, have done a good job, and we try to get all the credit for ourselves. Okay, so that's an example of this one. Or another example they give is if there's some property, some object that is owned communally by a number of people, and we try to manipulate the situation so that we get ownership of that, we get control over that, kind of pushing the other people out of the way so we can be the boss, be in control, have that object for ourselves. Again, you can see this is a self-centered attitude. Thinking I am more important than others, not caring about others. There's just two more in this section. I would like to finish that, so let's do them quickly. The next one has an interesting name. It says, don't turn gods into devils. So this is when any aspect of practice, Dharma study or Dharma practice, increases our ego or self-centeredness. So the Dharma teachings and Dharma practice are things that should decrease our ego, decrease our self-centeredness, decrease our arrogance. But it could happen that in the course of learning and practicing Dharma, these afflictive emotions could increase. We might become proud, for example, of how much we know, or how many retreats we have done, or how well we are able to meditate. So that would be an example of turning a god into a devil. Dharma study, Dharma practice, Dharma learning. Increasing our afflictive emotions rather than decreasing them. So we need to watch out for that. And I think good teachers, we have really good teachers, and we really study the teachings of our teachers, then that should help us to avoid that, because they're always pointing out these kind of mistakes that we might make, helping us be aware of them so we can avoid them. Okay, so the last one in this section of the commitments says, don't seek others' misery as a means to happiness. So examples of this might be, if there's someone we don't like, someone we think is bad, and we might secretly wish this person to meet with misfortune, to have bad things happen to them, and then feeling happy about that. We feel, oh, that'll make me happy. Or a misfortune happening to such a person, maybe someone we're competing with, someone we see as a rival. If something bad happens to them, we may see that as an opportunity that we can get ahead. So this is the meaning of achieving happiness over someone else's misery, someone else's misfortune. So again, this is very self-centered. This is coming from ego and self-centeredness, and also a lack of kindness, compassion, consideration for others. So if we're really working properly on the practice of thought training, we are looking out for our self-centered attitude and working to decrease it. We are also working to increase our compassion and our kindness and our wish to benefit others. Okay, so I'll stop there, and there's some time left. So we have one more point of the 7 points. The seventh point is called the Precepts of Mind Training. And there's quite a few of these. I think there's 24 altogether. But I really want to make sure, because we only have 2 more sessions, I want to make sure that we have time to look at ultimate bodhicitta, which is emptiness. So I'm thinking of just doing a few of these precepts, not all 24 of them, otherwise it would take too much time. And just do a few of them and then go on to ultimate bodhicitta. And you can read on your own, you can study on your own, whatever precepts we don't cover. Okay, so questions, anyone?
Okay, Qi-Han. Qi-Han, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Venerable. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, I have a question regarding the 5 great marks of a trained mind, which we discussed last week. And one of them was the great ascetic who bears great hardship to combat afflictions. So my question is, what does these hardships refer to? And how is this applicable to us, people who live in the city? Yeah, because my impression of hardship is yogis who go in a cave, and yeah. So how is this applicable to us?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, there are practitioners. I mean, the Buddha himself, as we know, went through a lot of hardships. He stayed in the forest for about 6 years and didn't even have a roof over his head or any shelter to protect him from weather and elements and insects and so on, and ate very little and almost died of starvation. So I think the hardships the Buddha went through are quite well known. And then I think all traditions, Tibetan tradition, Chinese tradition, Thai, and so on, have examples of really strong practitioners who also live quite simple lives and put up with difficulties. Sometimes they don't sleep at night, they eat very little, and so on. So there are these kind of cases of people who are just so determined in their practice of Dharma that they're willing to put up with any kind of difficulty, any kind of hardship. And probably most people, most practitioners are not able to do that. I know I'm not. And I like good food and being warm and comfortable and so on. But there are other kinds of hardships that we might put up with. Just trying to practice the Dharma, it does require some effort to learn, listen to teachings, learn them so that they become part of our mind and don't just go in one ear and out the other. And then practicing meditation. And then we may face hardships in terms of people around us who don't understand what we are doing and may not agree with what we are doing, may try to, talk us out of it, or, criticize us for what we are doing, and so on and so forth. So that's a kind of hardship, right? And then noise, living in Singapore, there's lots of noise. So that makes it difficult to meditate, difficult to concentrate. And having a job, if you, monks and nuns living in a monastery don't have to worry about, making money. So the needs, whatever they need is provided for them, so they can just focus on their practice. But most lay people have to support themselves, and often your family as well, your children, sometimes your parents and other family members. So you need to get a job, you need to work. And that's hardship. It's very hard. Yeah. Many hours, maybe you do something it's not very interesting, not very stimulating, maybe it's quite boring. And dealing with the people at work, a boss, colleagues, and so on. So those are all hardships. Okay? They're not the same as the hardships of a yogi living in the jungle or living in a cave, but they are challenges. And ideally, especially with the thought training teachings, we don't see those kind of problems as obstacles and, oh, this is really terrible and I can't practice Dharma because of this problem. In fact, these are opportunities to practice Dharma, to learn patience, compassion, kindness, wisdom. So there's many, many ways we can apply the Dharma, and especially the mind training teachings, to these hardships, these difficulties, these challenges in our life. So everybody has hardships. Everybody has difficulties in life. There's no perfect life anywhere in samsara, in cyclic existence. So, but we don't have to see these things as hardships, as obstacles, as problems, as bad things that we want to kind of push away or get away from. But all of these are opportunities for learning, for growth, for cultivation of positive qualities we need to get closer to enlightenment. So does that sound okay? Does that answer your question? It disappeared.
Yep, it does. Thank you so much, Venerable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Faye.
Hi, Venerable. Good evening.
Hi.
I had a question about, so I understand that we want to wish to be reborn in a better place. We can help others, but what if like we want to be reborn in like a pure land instead? I mean, that's kind of self-cherishing, I know. I don't know. I guess I have this view. I don't know if it's true that like pure land is better than being reborn as a human, right? And like, I guess how do you yeah, I mean, is it okay to ask if you're born in pure land? And what is also the Buddhist view think of like the heaven view in Christianity? Yeah, I don't know, just curious about that.
Why do you want to be born in a pure land?
Because I feel like in the human form, there's suffering. Is that true? Do I have a reasonable view of things, or not
So
really?
You want to avoid suffering.
Yeah.
You want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, I mean, that's certainly normal. I mean, of course, we all want to avoid suffering. We all want to have comfort and pleasure. But that's not the right motivation for going to a pure land. Because a pure land, for example, Amitabha, that's probably the most famous pure land. Amitabha Buddha emanated this place, Sukhavati or Sukhavati, as a place where sentient beings can go who wish to learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, continue their spiritual practice, their spiritual development to become a Buddha. So that's the motivation one should have to be born in a pure land, not just to kind of be comfortable and relaxed and not have problems.
Oh, but you can
So
also,
ideally, your motivation should be, I want to, go there and meet Amitabha Buddha and many other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and get teachings from them, continue practicing, meditating, and developing my mind and, reach enlightenment. So, yeah, so it's fine to go to a pure land. Yeah, but you just have to be careful what your motivation is.
I
What's
see.
your reason? Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, there are Buddhism also says there are these other like God realms or Deva realms. There's actually many of them. And they are places where, yeah, it's quite comfortable and pleasant and less suffering than here in our world. And many people will wish to go to those places just for that reason. They want to avoid suffering. They want to have a comfortable life, a pleasant life. But those are still just temporary situations. It's not a permanent situation. You create the karma, you're born there, you stay there for a while, but eventually your karma runs out. You come to the end of your life, you again die, and then you could be born anywhere. You could become, back here on earth, or maybe in one of the unfortunate realms. So it's just a temporary reprieve, a relief of suffering, but not a final solution, according to Buddhism. So that's why a pure land is better, because in a pure land, you're not just there to enjoy yourself. It's like a monastery. It's like going to a retreat. You're going there to practice.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, but you just have the conditions there are very good, very conducive for practice. So,
Okay. So then what is the Buddhist view think of like the heaven in other religions? Is it considered to be true as well or wrong, or it's just, I'm just curious.
Well, because I was raised Catholic, and so I was raised with the idea of God and heaven and so on. And, I think it could be the same thing. What the Christians or the Muslims or the Jews regard as heaven might be the same places that Buddhism, calls them Deva realms or God realms. It could be talking about the same thing, but just different names, just different terminology. Because to be born in such places, to go to such places, you have to live a virtuous life. You have to refrain from evil, non-virtue, bad things You have to do good, do virtue. You know, you're creating the cause to go there. So I think it's probably, it could be the same. I can't say for sure, but I think it could be the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Next is Catherine.
Good morning, Venerable. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yes. For a layman who wishes to practice purification, can you guide me to exactly what I should do, visualize, or say?
Purification. Well, we have this practice consisting of 4 powers, the 4 powers of purification. Have you heard of that?
Can you talk about it, please?
Well, there are 4, mainly they're mental attitudes that we develop. The first one is regret. Well, sometimes they're explained in a different order, but this is the order that I like. First is regret. So that's, let's say maybe yesterday I yelled at somebody and got angry at somebody and hurt their feelings. So today I think, oh, I'm really sorry that I did that. I know that wasn't the right thing to do. So I feel regret. That's the meaning of regret. It's a recognition that something you did was unwise, unskillful, and you're sorry that you did it. And you want to purify it. You want to, of course, it's also good if you have done something hurtful to another person, it's good to apologize to them and try to, clear up that relationship. But that doesn't clear up the karma. Okay, apologizing to the person will not change your karma. So purification is to purify the karma that we created. So regret is the first step, and then the second one is taking refuge. So this is if you are Buddhist and you do have faith in the Buddha and the 3 jewels. So you renew that. You renew your refuge, your devotion to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and you wish to follow them in your life. This is the path that I want to follow. So you're renewing your commitment to that. Also, compassion. That's a big part of the Buddhist path, that we try to always act compassionately. And so you remind yourself of that. You renew your wish to act compassionately and not harmfully. The third step is remedy. That's doing something positive, virtuous, to sort of counteract the negative thing that we did. So there's different practices you could do. In the Tibet tradition, one is Vajrasattva. You visualize this deity called Vajrasattva and recite a mantra, Vajrasattva, and imagine light coming through you and clearing out your karma and all that negative energy. But you could also do any other Buddhist deity, like just the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha. Visualize Shakyamuni Buddha, recite the Buddha's mantra, and imagine light coming from the Buddha and clearing out your negative karma. So it's said in general that any virtuous thing, any positive thing that you do can be used for this third power, power of remedy. It's doing something positive, virtuous, constructive to make up for the negative thing you did. And the fourth power is the power of resolution or promise. Now here you make a promise to not do that negative action again to the best of your ability. You might be able to say, I will never do that again, or I can't completely stop, but for the next hour, I will make sure I don't do that. For the next day, I will not do that. So some kind of promise to not just go out and do that same negative action again. So that's just a brief explanation. There's a book that I wrote called How to Meditate. I don't know if they still have copies available at Amitabha Buddha Center. I think there was a free distribution. You do have, yeah. So get a hold of that book, How to Meditate, and look through the table of contents. I don't know exactly what page it's on, but somewhere in there is an explanation of the 4 opponent powers, or the practice of purification. And so that will give you more help, more guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
purification is very important.
sorry, I interrupted. Faye wants to ask some question again. Yeah.
So maybe this will be the last question, because it's getting kind of late.
Oh.
Yeah.
For me anyway.
Just curious, like how for you, I mean, like how do you know, like it's true about that whatever we were born in, whether it's a God realm or Pure Land, it's temporary? Like, I guess from your journey, from being being raised Catholic to Buddhism, like how did you know it's true? And what do you do when you have doubt?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can't verify with our own experience. I mean, generally, the Buddha said we should not just believe his teachings, but investigate them for ourselves, check them out for ourselves to see if they're true or not. And it said that if you through the practice of meditation, developing the mind, it is possible to verify.
Let Papa finish with my Om Mani Pet Pet Home. Om Mani Pet Pet Home. Om Mani Pet Pet Home.
Sorry.
So through practicing meditation, of course, you do have to practice quite a lot and develop your mind quite high, but it is possible to have the same experiences, the same knowledge that the Buddha himself had. And so then you can know for sure, for yourself, firsthand, what he said is true. So I'm not at that point yet. I'm not able to be 100% sure, but I do feel that so much of what the Buddha taught really makes sense to me and it matches my experience of life and also the world that I see around me. I just feel his explanation of things makes more sense than any others that I've come across.
Same.
So that gives me some confidence that the Buddha is someone quite wise and someone reliable, someone who's telling the truth and not lying or deceiving us. And so I can't say I have 100% belief in everything that the Buddha said, but I do feel, the more I study, the more I practice, the more confident I do feel in what he taught. And I'm still very much on the way to checking myself, investigating myself, trying to verify myself. So I'm at that point where it makes sense to me and I can see the benefit, when I do study and practice the Buddha's teachings, I can see it's benefited me a great deal, and other people around me also have benefited very much. So that gives me the confidence to keep going, keep studying, keep practicing, and hopefully one day I will be able to know for myself other aspects of the teachings that I can't prove right now, but I also can't disprove them.
Okay.
So they could be true. They could be true.
Okay. That helps. Thank you so much.
It's good to just try to keep an open mind and don't feel like you have to believe 100%, but also you don't have to reject it 100%. Just try to think, well, this is what the Buddha taught. Maybe it's true, and I will investigate. I will try to understand more. And also the Buddha did emphasize, what's really important is here and now, like our mind. And within our mind, there are these disturbing thoughts and emotions that create a lot of suffering for ourselves and others. And that's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to work on now. And these other things like, what happens after death? And how long do you stay in heaven? And things like that, isn't so important
Okay.
for right now. We need to, take care of our lives, our minds, our behavior, you know, right now, today, this present life.
That's very true. Thank you. Thank you, Venerable.
Well, thank you for the good questions. So we'll stop here for now, and we'll meet again next week. And let's finish by making a dedication of the positive energy, the merit we've created, coming together, doing meditation, listening, thinking about, talking about these teachings, which are so precious, so helpful. So we've created a lot of merit, positive energy, and let's share this merit with others, other beings, wishing that it will bring them benefit, peace, happiness, freedom from suffering, and eventually enlightenment. Okay, so have a nice day, nice week, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you.
Thank you.